The commander-in-chief receiving the royal treatment, a presidential parade, and a festive ceremony welcoming him to Saudi Arabia. President Trump turning his focus to foreign policy on his first international trip, but back in Washington, his administration dealing with plenty of drama. 7's Joe Roach live in the Flex with details.
Sheldon, day one of the president's trip comes with a multi-billion-dollar agreement with the Saudis that Donald Trump promises will create jobs and stability back here in the States. An elaborate arrival in Saudi Arabia, marking the start of a whirlwind overseas trip for the President of the United States.
It was a tremendous day. I just want to thank everybody, but tremendous investments into the United States.
Posing for pictures with the Saudi delegation, Mr. Trump referring to a just announced $110 billion arms deal with Saudi Arabia.
Hundreds of billions of dollars of investments into the United States and jobs, jobs, jobs.
No mention from the commander-in-chief about the controversy brewing back in Washington, D.C. Fired FBI Director James Comey now set to publicly testify in front of a Senate Intelligence Committee, part of a fast-growing probe into what ties, if any, President Donald Trump's 2016 campaign had with Russia. The New York Times looking at the president's sudden firing of Comey last week. The article focusing on Oval Office discussions the president had with two top-ranking Russian diplomats the day after, in which the president openly discusses the decision. The Times reports the president told the Russians, quote, "I just fired the head of the FBI. He was crazy, a real nut job," and, quote, "I faced great pressure because of Russia. That's taken off." Press Secretary Sean Spicer not denying the claims, issuing a statement that reads in part, quote, "By grandstanding and politicizing the investigation into Russia's actions, James Comey created unnecessary pressure on our ability to engage and negotiate with Russia." Times reporter Matthew Rosenberg speaking to CNN's Aaron Burnett.
So early in the week, we learned that during that same meeting, Trump had shared intelligence with the Russians that was given to the U.S. by the Israelis, with the express condition we do not share that intelligence with any of our allies.
Piling onto that, the Washington Post published its own article on the Russian investigation, reporting the law enforcement investigation into possible coordination between Russia and the Trump campaign has identified a current White House official as a significant person of interest. Democrats issuing their weekly address.
In just 4 months, these scandals have shaken the foundations of our democracy and even caused panic in the markets as many begin to question the president's ability to govern.
Now, CNN citing sources saying White House lawyers are now reading up on impeachment procedures to become familiar with them. Meanwhile, the president's trip continues tomorrow morning with what's expected to be a monumental speech calling for unity in combating terrorism. Live in the Plex, Joe Roach, 7 News.
Thanks, Joe. And stay with 7 News as our coverage of President Trump's trip continues. We'll have the very latest on air and online at WSVN.com.